"I'll pay for him," the little girl said, unaware she'd just saved the millionaire who turned out to be her father. The morning was like any other in Manhattan. Sharp sunlight bouncing off glass towers, the hum of traffic layered with the distant whine of sirens and the soft clatter of early footsteps. The city moved fast, but inside a cozy cafe tucked between two high-rises, time seemed to slow down. Michael Devereaux stood near the counter, scrolling through his emails as he waited in line. His dark gray suit fit him flawlessly, tailored to the tall, broad-shouldered frame of a man who had long since learned to own every room he entered. His brown eyes were focused, sharp beneath neatly styled dark hair. He looked like a man who belonged at the top, and he was. CEO of one of the most powerful tech firms in the country, a self-made multimillionaire, and the subject of dozens of interviews, articles, and rumors. But this morning he wasn't thinking about power or profit. He just needed his coffee. "Good morning, sir. What can I get started for you?" the barista asked with a cheerful smile. "Large black coffee," Michael replied, barely glancing up as he reached into his suit pocket for his wallet. Except, it wasn't there. He paused, checked another pocket, then another. His expression didn't change, but his fingers moved faster, patting down every possible space. No wallet. For a man who ran a global company, this was a minor inconvenience, nothing more. But standing at the counter without his usual sense of control, it felt oddly disarming. I, I think I forgot my wallet," he said, finally looking up, offering an apologetic smile to the barista. "Can you hold the order for a moment?" The barista nodded, not unkindly. "Sure, happens to the best of us." Michael stepped aside, checking his phone to see if he had any mobile payment options set up. He didn't. Of course not. He used his personal card for everything, and now it was probably sitting on the dresser in his penthouse apartment. Just then, the cafe door jingled, and a little girl stepped inside. She looked no older than 7, small with delicate features and long chestnut brown hair that flowed down her back in soft waves. Her eyes were large, bright, and dark, filled with the curious confidence that only young children carry. She wore a simple light blue dress and held a crumpled $5 bill in her hand like it was a treasure. She walked straight to the counter, stood on tiptoe, and said with a clear voice, "1 strawberry pastry, please." "For my mom." The barista smiled and began to wrap the pastry. Michael turned slightly, watching her. Then the girl looked at him. Just for a second. Her eyes studied his face, not with fear or shyness, but with quiet observance. Then she glanced at the coffee cup still sitting behind the register. "He couldn't pay," she asked, motioning to Michael with her head. The barista laughed softly. "He forgot his wallet." The girl didn't hesitate. "I'll pay for him. I have enough." Michael blinked. "That's not necessary." But she was already handing over her bill. "It's okay," she said, smiling at him. "My mom says helping someone is always worth it." The barista gave her the pastry and handed Michael his coffee. "You've got a good kid," he said, clearly assuming they were together. Michael chuckled awkwardly. "She's not mine, but I agree." The girl walked to the door, looked back at him once, then stepped outside. Michael took a sip of the coffee, still warm in his hands. Something about it felt different. Not the taste, the moment, the gesture. He wasn't used to being helped, certainly not by a child, not without calculation or expectation. She hadn't recognized him, hadn't asked his name, hadn't known he was worth millions. She simply saw a man in need and offered what little she had. It stayed with him. He stepped outside moments later, scanning the street out of instinct. And there she was, sitting on a bench across the sidewalk, legs swinging, pastry in hand. She wasn't alone for long. A woman approached her from the corner. Tall, lean, with dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail and wearing a plain white t-shirt and light jeans. As she reached the girl, she crouched down, kissed the top of her head, and accepted the pastry with a surprised smile. Michael stopped walking, because he knew that face, even from a distance, even after all these years. Emily. And in that instant, standing on a sunlit sidewalk, holding a coffee cup a little girl had bought for him, Michael Devereaux felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Michael stood frozen on the sidewalk, his hand wrapped around the still warm cup of coffee, his gaze locked on the woman sitting across the street. The city moved around him, horns honking, voices blending into a low hum, the occasional breeze stirring a napkin on the sidewalk. But he didn't register any of it. It was as if time had narrowed to a tunnel, and at the end of it stood Emily Carter, the woman he had once imagined building a life with, the woman who had vanished from his world nearly 8 years ago without a trace. He hadn't seen her since college, not after the internship in San Francisco turned permanent, not after his father convinced him to focus on the future, not distractions. He had tried to reach out during those chaotic post-graduation months, but her phone had stopped working, her social media had gone silent, and the letters he sent were returned with no forwarding address. Eventually, he believed what others told him, that she'd moved on, that she didn't want to be found, that maybe she hadn't meant what she said after all. But now she was here. She sat on the bench beside the little girl who had bought his coffee, her back partially turned, carefully tearing the pastry in half to share. When she turned her head slightly and laughed at something the girl said, Michael felt like he'd been struck. Her face was a little older now, softer, more tired maybe, but her laugh hadn't changed. Neither had the color of her eyes. That piercing, almost ethereal blue that he used to say reminded him of glacier water. He could see them even from across the street. He crossed slowly, barely breathing. Half of him still didn't believe what he was seeing. The other half was terrified of what would happen if he spoke. But he had to. The questions were already rising in his chest, burning behind his ribs. He stopped a few feet away. "Emily?" She looked up, and for a heartbeat, her entire body stilled. Pastry in hand, lips parted, eyes locked on his. The little girl, Lily, looked between them, confused by the sudden shift in her mother's expression. Emily stood slowly. She was thinner than he remembered, but there was strength in her posture, a quiet protectiveness that surrounded her like armor. "Michael," she said, barely above a whisper. He swallowed. I didn't know you were here. I didn't know you were even in New York." "I didn't think you did," she replied. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were anything but. There was surprise there, and tension, and something else. A flicker of panic, maybe, or memory. Michael looked down at the girl beside her. She's the one who bought me coffee. I didn't know she was with you." Emily laid a hand gently on Lily's shoulder. "She's mine," she said simply. And in that moment, with that simple, loaded sentence, Michael felt something shift in his chest. He looked at the girl again. Really looked. The same brown eyes, the same hair, the same quiet determination in the way she stood, chin up, shoulders straight. All those details he hadn't registered before now hit him with force. He took a slow breath. "She's mine too, isn't she?" he asked softly. Emily hesitated. Lily looked up at her mother, sensing something serious was unfolding. Emily knelt beside her and gently smoothed a hand over her hair. "Sweetheart, can you give me a moment to talk to this man? I'll be right over there with you in just a minute." Lily nodded. She took her pastry and moved a few feet away to a nearby planter, swinging her legs over the edge and humming quietly to herself as she ate. Emily stood. Her voice was low but steady. "Yes, she's yours." The words landed like a tremor. Not an explosion, no shouting, no drama, but something deeper, quieter. The kind of thing that reshapes the ground under your feet without warning. Michael didn't know what to say. The air felt thinner. "You never told me," he finally said. "Why?" Emily let out a slow breath, her arms folded across her chest. "I tried, Michael. I wrote to you. I called. You never answered. And then your father came." Michael blinked. "My father?" She nodded. "He came to see me. I was 5 months pregnant. He said you'd moved on, that you didn't want anything to do with me, that you were too busy building your life, and that I was a distraction." He brought a check, told me it was for support, but the condition was silence. Michael's heart dropped into his stomach. "I never knew," he whispered. "He never told me." Emily's voice trembled now, just slightly. "I believed him. I mean, why wouldn't I? He was your family. You'd stop calling. I thought maybe I was a mistake you didn't want to live with." Michael stepped back, running a hand over his mouth. The weight of it all was crushing. The missed years, the birthdays, the first steps, the first words, all gone. Stolen by pride, ambition, and the quiet lies of someone long dead. "I would have been there," he said hoarsely. "You have to believe that." Emily nodded slowly. I believe you now. They stood there in silence for a long moment, the city moving around them once more. Lily called out softly and Emily turned. She doesn't know, she said. She doesn't know who you are. Michael looked at her. Do you want her to? I don't know, Emily admitted. But maybe she should. The following day, the city pulsed with its usual rhythm. People rushing past, taxis honking, business meetings unfolding in towers of steel and glass. But for Michael, everything felt out of sync. His mind wasn't on numbers or strategy, not on boardrooms or projections. It was consumed by one thing, Lily. He had barely slept the night before. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, the way her hair caught the sunlight, the quiet confidence in her voice when she told the barista, I'll pay for him. He kept replaying Emily's words over and over. She doesn't know who you are. That sentence echoed through him like a haunting rhythm. She was 7 years of life, 7 birthdays, 7 summers, and he hadn't been there for any of them. He canceled his morning meetings and instead found himself walking, without really knowing where he was going, until he ended up in front of the same cafe. The one where it had all started. He stood outside for a long moment before stepping inside. The place looked the same, but now it felt entirely different. He ordered a coffee, paid for it this time, and sat down by the window. His hands were clasped tightly around the cup, and his thoughts wandered to all the questions he wanted to ask. About Emily, about Lily, about everything he'd missed. 20 minutes later, the door opened with a soft jingle, and there they were. Emily spotted him first. She gave a brief, hesitant smile as she walked in with Lily at her side, holding her hand. Lily wore a pale blue jacket over a light dress, and her hair was pulled into a loose braid. She was talking animatedly about something to Emily, but stopped when she saw Michael. He stood up. Emily leaned down and whispered something to Lily, then nudged her gently forward. Lily walked up to the table and looked at Michael, tilting her head slightly. Hi, she said. Hi, he replied, his voice warm but uncertain. You're the man from yesterday, she added. The one who forgot his wallet. He smiled. That's me. Mom said we're meeting you again because you're special, she said matter-of-factly. Michael glanced at Emily, who was trying not to smile. Did she? Lily nodded. Are you like a magician or something? Michael laughed, a deep sound that felt strange coming out of him, like it hadn't been used in a while. Not quite, but I guess I am someone special. To your mom. Emily stepped closer, her expression gentle. Lily, this is someone I knew a long time ago, before you were born. His name is Michael. Lily studied him carefully, her eyes searching his face with a seriousness that didn't match her age. Do you like strawberry pastries? She asked suddenly. He blinked. I do now. That made her giggle. They sat together at the corner table. The conversation was light at first. Lily did most of the talking. About school, about her favorite books, about a cat named Pancake that lived in the building next door. Michael listened like a man starved, absorbing every detail, every movement of her hands, every change in her tone. Emily sat across from him, occasionally jumping in, but mostly letting the two of them talk. Her gaze drifted often, as if she, too, was overwhelmed by the surrealism of the moment. Every so often their eyes would meet, and something passed between them. Not romantic, not yet, but deep, heavy with history, grief, hope. Eventually, Lily got up to look at a display of pastries by the counter. Michael leaned in slightly toward Emily. His voice was quiet but intense. She's incredible. I know, Emily said. She's strong, smarter than I ever was. She's everything. She's also mine, he said, and there was a crack in his voice that he didn't bother hiding. Emily looked down, then back at him. I know you want to be a part of her life, but Michael, this can't be a weekend thing. You can't drop in when you have time. He nodded. I don't want that either. I want to be her father. Emily didn't speak for a moment. It won't be easy. She's never asked about her dad, not once. I didn't lie, I let her believe there wasn't a story to tell. And now, he asked gently. She met his eyes. Now I think she deserves to know it. There was a pause. The kind that feels like standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting for the wind to decide your fate. Then Lily returned, holding 2 napkins. I brought you this, she said, handing one to Michael. It's a cookie. You look like you need one. He smiled and accepted it. Thank you. She sat beside him and took a big bite of her own. Mom says I talk too much sometimes, she said through a mouthful of cookie. I think you talk just the right amount, he replied. She beamed, and as the sun shifted through the windows and laughter returned to the little cafe, Michael knew something had begun. Something slow, delicate, and not fully formed, but real. A thread reconnected, a future rewritten. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was finally clear. He had a daughter. And she was sitting right beside him, offering him half her cookie like it was the most natural thing in the world. The following weeks unfolded like pages of a life Michael never knew he was missing. Every moment with Lily felt like catching a glimpse of something fragile, something that had been just out of reach for too long. He didn't try to rush into a title or demand anything from her. Instead, he showed up, again and again, quietly, steadily. He started picking her up from school once a week, at first just as mom's friend, someone who brought her favorite juice or listened patiently as she talked about art class, and which classmate always got in trouble. Then it became 2 days, then 3. By the 3rd week, when she spotted him through the school gates and ran toward him with her backpack bouncing behind her, he felt something crack open in his chest. He wasn't just her father biologically. He was becoming her father in the ways that mattered. They built routines. After school, they'd walk through Central Park, where Lily would race him to benches and quiz him on flowers she thought he should know the names of. On rainy days, they went to a quiet bookstore where she would wander off and return with her arms full of picture books and early chapter novels. Michael bought them all, every single one. At home in his penthouse that had once felt more like a showroom than a place to live, he cleared out an entire guest room and turned it into Lily's corner. Soft rugs, beanbags, a bookshelf that reached the ceiling, and a mural of stars painted by a local artist. The first time she stepped into it, she stared at the room in silence, then walked over to him and simply hugged him. No words, just arms wrapped around his waist like she had always belonged there. He held her for a long time. Emily, meanwhile, watched it all with a cautious heart. She knew how quickly the world could change. She had spent years guarding Lily from disappointment, from questions she couldn't answer. Letting Michael in wasn't easy for her. Trust, after all, was something he had once broken, maybe not knowingly, but still painfully. But he was proving himself, not with grand gestures, not with gifts or promises, with presence, with listening, with consistency. Still, there were hard conversations waiting, and Michael knew it. One evening, after Lily had fallen asleep on the couch in his apartment, curled under a blanket, a book open on her chest, Michael and Emily sat in the kitchen. She held a cup of tea and he had poured himself a glass of wine he didn't touch. I want to tell her the truth, he said finally. Not just that I'm her dad, the whole story. Emily looked up slowly. Her dark hair was pulled back loosely, and her blue eyes looked tired but clear. What version of the story? She asked quietly. The real one. That I didn't know. That I wanted to find you. That I thought you were gone because you chose to leave. That I was lied to. And the part where you didn't try harder? She asked, not unkindly. He didn't flinch. That part too. Emily studied him for a long time. She's not fragile, Michael, but she is still a child, and she's never once asked why she doesn't have a dad. I think maybe she was trying to protect me. Michael ran a hand over his face. That's what breaks me the most. She's built a life where love was enough, Emily said, and now we're changing the shape of that love. We have to do it carefully. I know, he said. I want to earn her understanding and your trust. Emily put down her cup and leaned back, folding her arms. You're doing it. Slowly. But I need to be honest with you about something. He tensed. She's everything to me, she said. And if you hurt her, even by accident, I won't forgive you. I'm not saying that to threaten you. I'm saying it so you understand what you're holding in your hands. I do, Michael said, his voice rough. I do more than you know. They sat in silence for a while after that. The city lights twinkled beyond the tall windows, the sound of distant traffic blending with the soft hum of the building. Michael looked toward the living room, where Lily had shifted in her sleep, her little hand still resting on the book. I want to be her father, Em, he said softly now. Not the one who pays for things, the one who catches her when she falls, The one who tells her she's enough every day. The one who never leaves again. Emily didn't answer right away. But then she stood, walked to the couch and covered Lily more fully with the blanket. She stood over her daughter for a moment, brushing back a strand of hair from her forehead. Then she turned back to him. Then let's start telling her the truth. Together. Michael felt his heart finally begin to settle. Maybe he couldn't rewrite the past. But with Emily and Lily in his life again, for the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt like hope. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon when the moment finally came. Michael had been preparing for it all week, rehearsing what he might say, how he might answer Lily's questions, what words a child needed to hear when being told something so complex, so delicate. And yet, no matter how many drafts he ran through in his head, none of them felt good enough. How do you tell a child that you are her father, not a family friend, not a generous grown-up who takes her for cookies and paints stars on her bedroom walls, but the man who should have been there for every scraped knee, every bedtime story, every first word? He and Emily had agreed that the conversation would happen gently, but directly, and only when Lily was relaxed and in her safe space. That day, they met at the park near Emily's apartment. Lily ran ahead of them through the trees, chasing bubbles from a vendor's wand, her laughter skipping through the air. Michael and Emily walked slowly behind her, side by side, their conversation quiet and unfinished. "She's in a good mood," Emily said, glancing toward their daughter. Michael nodded, though his jaw was tight. "She looks like you when she runs." Emily gave a soft smile. "She has your stubborn eyebrows." He chuckled, though the sound felt thin. "Are you sure this is the right time?" "There won't ever be a perfect one," Emily said. "But we owe her the truth, and she trusts you now. You've earned that." They reached a bench tucked beneath a willow tree. Lily spotted them and bounded over, cheeks flushed, hair tousled by the breeze. She plopped between them and stretched her legs across Michael's lap as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He froze for just a second, then rested a gentle hand on her ankles. Emily brushed a leaf from Lily's hair. "Sweetheart, can we talk to you for a minute?" Lily glanced between them. "Am I in trouble?" Michael smiled. "Not at all. This is just something important." She sat up a little straighter, sensing the change in tone. "Okay." Emily met Michael's eyes. He took a breath. "Lily," he began, voice soft but clear, "do you remember when I told you that I used to know your mom a long time ago?" She nodded. "Well, we weren't just friends. We loved each other. Very much. And when your mom found out she was going to have a baby, I didn't know. I didn't get to be there when you were born, or when you learned to walk, or when you had your first day of school. I missed all of it." Lily tilted her head. "You didn't want to be there?" His chest tightened. "No," he said quickly. "I wanted to be there. More than anything. But sometimes adults make mistakes, and sometimes other people keep us apart. But the truth is," his voice caught, "the truth is, I'm your dad. Your real dad." Lily blinked. Her little fingers curled into her lap. Michael kept going, trying to keep his voice steady. "You're my daughter, Lily, and I am so, so sorry I wasn't there sooner." For a moment, she didn't say anything. Emily reached out, gently touching her daughter's hand. "We waited to tell you until we were sure it wouldn't scare you. But you deserve to know." Lily looked down at her shoes, then up at Michael. "You're my dad?" she asked again, just to be sure. "Yes," he said, if you'll let me be." She stared at him, long and hard. Her little brow furrowed, like she was solving a very serious puzzle. Then slowly, her lip trembled. "You missed a lot," she whispered. Michael's heart cracked. "I know. I had a birthday with a magician," she said, eyes watering, "and a ballet recital. And I lost a tooth in the library." "I missed all of it," he said, the guilt pouring out of him. "And I think about it every day. But I want to be there now. For everything." She looked at him. Really looked. Then something shifted. Not sudden, not loud, but a soft unlocking, like a door left open. "Okay," she said. His breath caught. "Okay? You can be my dad now if you want, but you have to come to the next recital." "I will," he whispered. "I promise." And I want pancakes on my birthday with strawberries and whipped cream. I'll make them myself. She leaned forward, wrapped her arms around his middle, and buried her face in his jacket. It was a small hug, not tight or desperate, but firm, intentional. A statement, a beginning. He closed his eyes and held her gently, blinking back tears. Emily wiped her cheek, then stood, giving them space. They sat there for a long time, the two of them, beneath the tree, surrounded by birdsong and the rustle of wind through leaves. For the first time in years, Michael felt like a whole person. Not a man built of achievements or titles, not the CEO in headlines, just a father, finally seen by the child he never stopped needing to find. And in that quiet afternoon, with her tiny arms still around him, Michael Devereaux was no longer haunted by the years he'd missed. Because now, finally, he was here. The days after Lily learned the truth passed in a strange mix of simplicity and emotional weight. Life didn't stop. It never does. School continued, errands were run, and the usual routines fell back into place. But something between the three of them had undeniably shifted. There was a new closeness, a quiet awareness that hovered in the air when they were together, as if the truth had drawn an invisible thread that bound them more tightly, but also made every interaction more fragile, more meaningful. Lily didn't ask many questions in the beginning. She didn't seem confused or angry, at least not on the surface. In her way, she simply accepted it. Michael was her father now, fully, officially, and emotionally, and she moved forward like someone who had been waiting her whole life for a missing piece to finally click into place. But Michael knew that just because she didn't voice her questions, it didn't mean they weren't there. He made it his mission to answer them anyway. Every afternoon, he picked her up from school. Some days they walked straight to the park. Other times they went to his apartment where she would do homework while he answered emails nearby. He started setting alarms so he could log off at 5:01 p.m. sharp. His assistant didn't understand at first. Neither did the board. But Michael didn't explain. He didn't need to. On Fridays, he cooked dinner for both Lily and Emily. It started as a fun idea, pasta night with too much Parmesan and burnt garlic bread, but quickly became tradition. Lily started setting the table herself, placing napkins and mismatched silverware with careful precision. Emily, always watching from the kitchen island, seemed to soften with each week. One night, as Michael tucked Lily into bed in her new room in his apartment, her room, not a guest room anymore, she suddenly turned to him with a question that stopped him cold. "Do you think I would have liked you when I was a baby?" He smiled, though his throat tightened. "I think you would have loved me." She nodded thoughtfully. "Did you want a kid?" "Yes," he said honestly. "I just didn't know I already had one." She reached out and touched his hand. "You're here now. That's the part I like best." Michael kissed her forehead and whispered good night, then stepped into the hallway and stood there for a long time, eyes closed, hand pressed against the doorframe. He had always thought of himself as strong, someone who could handle pressure, who thrived in crisis, but nothing had ever undone him like the quiet acceptance of a little girl who should have had every reason to reject him. Meanwhile, his life outside of Lily was changing too. His image in the public eye had always been controlled, almost surgical. Brilliant CEO, workaholic, emotionally distant, but professionally infallible. The revelation that he had a child, and that he had unknowingly missed the first 7 years of her life, was not something he could keep out of the spotlight forever. Paparazzi had already snapped a photo of them outside the bookstore. Lily's hand in his, her face partially hidden by a scarf. The story was leaked within 24 hours. Tech Titan's secret daughter. The internet exploded. Some praised him, some accused him of hiding her, some invented entire false narratives as they always did. Emily received unwanted attention too, photographers waiting outside her building, reporters trying to bait her with questions. Lily, thankfully, was mostly protected due to her age, but even so, the pressure mounted. Michael called an emergency meeting with his PR team and made one thing clear: he would not spin the truth. "If they're going to know the story," he told them, "they're going to hear it from me." Days later, he sat down for an exclusive interview. The set was modest, a quiet room with no glamour, no pomp, no branding behind him. Just Michael, seated in a dark sweater and jeans, no suit, no tie. Just a father, ready to tell the world who he really was. "I didn't know I had a daughter," he said directly to the camera, And when I found out, it changed everything. Not because I felt obligated, not because of guilt or image, but because I suddenly realized I had a chance to be part of something bigger than myself. A second chance at the one thing I never knew I needed most. The interview aired that evening. It went viral within hours, but Michael didn't watch it live. He was at home with Lily and Emily, curled on the couch. Lily had fallen asleep halfway through a movie. Emily was beside him, head resting on his shoulder, her fingers loosely intertwined with his. He glanced down at his daughter, the soft rhythm of her breathing steady against his side. This was real. This was his life now. Not the articles, not the noise, not the headlines. Just this. The quiet, imperfect miracle of second chances. Autumn came to New York in soft golds and smoky reds, the trees lining the avenues, shedding their leaves like secrets, one by one. The air turned crisp, and with it came a rhythm that felt new for Michael. For years, fall had always meant the fourth quarter crunch, investor calls, end-of-year projections. But now it meant other things. It meant walking Lily to school under a canopy of changing leaves. It meant watching her jump into piles of them with loud, carefree laughter. It meant small hands tugging at his as they chose pumpkins at the farmer's market, arguing over whether they should carve a cat or a haunted castle this year. It meant family. Michael had never really understood that word before. Not like this. He had grown up in a home where success was demanded and emotion was inconvenient. His father, a man of structure and control, had taught him how to build empires but never how to build connections. The irony wasn't lost on him, that the very man who'd insisted he focus on legacy had kept from him the most meaningful part of it, Lily. He still thought about that more than he let on. Sometimes at night, long after Emily had gone to bed and Lily was asleep with a book still open on her chest, he would sit alone in the living room, looking at the city through the windows, and try to untangle the grief from the rage. What would have happened if he'd known? Would he have been ready? Would he have walked away from the deals, the late nights, the relentless drive to conquer the world? He didn't know, and maybe it didn't matter anymore. Because now finally he was choosing her, choosing them, and they were beginning to choose him too. Lily had started calling him Dad. Not all the time. Sometimes it was Michael, especially when she was teasing him or trying to sound very grown up. But every time she said Dad, it sent something warm and raw straight through his chest. The first time it happened, he'd been helping her with a science project, gluing tiny plastic planets to a foam board, and she had handed him a glue stick and said, "Here you go, Dad." He hadn't responded right away. He couldn't. He just stared at her, heart pounding, until she looked up and said, "What? Too much glue?" He'd laughed, choked and uneven. "No, kiddo. Just perfect." Emily noticed it too. The way Michael moved differently now, slower in the moments that mattered, more present. He still worked. He still led. But he no longer treated Lily like a beautiful interruption. She had become the center of his gravity. And Emily, after years of doing it all alone, finally felt like she could breathe. They had dinner together almost every night now, rotating between Michael's place and Emily's smaller but cozier apartment uptown. Lily would choose the music, usually something loud and ridiculous, and the three of them would dance around the kitchen like nobody was watching. Michael, who had once held every move to a schedule and every word to a strategy, found himself being ridiculous without shame. But it wasn't always light. One evening, while folding laundry in Michael's living room, Emily found a box, not hidden, just tucked neatly on a shelf, his college things. Inside there were old notes, photographs, and at the very bottom, a letter addressed to him in handwriting she hadn't seen in years, her own. She sat there for a long time holding it, remembering the night she wrote it, how she'd stayed up until dawn, crying over every word, how she'd dropped it in the mailbox the next morning, unsure if it would even reach him. Now, holding it unopened in her hand, she realized it never had. Michael walked in and froze when he saw her with it. "I didn't know you found that," he said quietly. She looked up, tears welling in her eyes. "You kept it." "I got it years later," he explained. "Forwarded to my office. It had been lost in some university archive. I read it the same day I made my first million." Emily stood, the letter trembling slightly in her fingers. And what did you feel? Like I'd spent years building the wrong empire. They didn't speak after that for a long while, just held each other in a silence full of everything they'd never said. Later that week, Michael surprised Lily by picking her up early from school with 2 hot chocolates in hand and tickets to a space exhibit at the museum. She squealed when she saw the planetarium dome and spent an hour explaining black holes with wild hand gestures. As they walked back to the car, she looked up at him, her cheeks pink from the cold. Did you always want to be a dad? He thought about it. I don't think I knew how much I wanted it until I met you. She smiled and reached for his hand. That night, after Lily fell asleep on the couch with a stuffed alien in her arms, Emily sat beside Michael, her head resting on his shoulder. I used to dream about this, she whispered. The three of us. It felt so far away. We're here now, he said, and I don't want to waste a second of it. Emily looked at him, her eyes soft but fierce. Then don't let work swallow you again. Don't forget that she needs you, not just what you can give her. I won't, he said. I promise. And this time, she believed him. The seasons kept changing, as they always did. But now Michael didn't watch time pass from a distance. He was in it, with them, building something that couldn't be measured by shares or market value, building a life, a real one. One laugh, one bedtime story, one imperfect, beautiful moment at a time. Winter came slowly, draping the city in a soft, silver silence. The first snow arrived one early morning in December, dusting rooftops and fire escapes, turning sidewalks into quiet pathways lined with delicate footprints. Michael stood by the window of his penthouse, a cup of coffee in his hands, watching the flakes drift down past the glass like feathers. The skyline looked different these days, not because the buildings had changed, but because he had. He no longer measured success in floor-to-ceiling views or investor calls. Success now was waking up and hearing Lily's laugh echo down the hallway. Success was pancakes on Sunday, and storybooks with missing pages, and a child's hand wrapped around his own as they crossed the street. It had been several months since the day Lily called him Dad for the first time. That one word, so simple and small, had opened something massive inside of him, a space he didn't even realize had been hollow. Since then, it had grown into something real, steady, sometimes messy, sometimes exhausting, but always worth it. Now, with Christmas approaching, life had found a rhythm that felt not only natural, but needed. Michael split time between his home and Emily's apartment. The once carefully curated walls of his penthouse were now cluttered with drawings, glitter-glued ornaments, and a tree that leaned slightly to one side but sparkled with handmade charm. A paper angel Lily had made in art class topped it proudly, lopsided wings and all. He didn't fix it. He couldn't. He didn't want perfect. He wanted them. The week before Christmas, Michael surprised Lily by picking her up from school in a red scarf and a Santa hat she'd insisted he wear. They strolled through a holiday market, drinking warm cider and choosing ornaments shaped like stars and tiny snowmen. Every now and then, she would look up at him with this quiet, content expression, like she was still wrapping her mind around the idea that he was really hers. That night, they returned to Emily's apartment, and Michael cooked dinner while Lily sat at the table, cutting snowflakes from white paper scraps. Emily leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, watching him with the same quiet surprise she always carried now. Still a little amazed that the man who once vanished into a world of deadlines and headlines had returned not just to their lives, but into them fully. After dinner, with Lily tucked into bed, Michael and Emily sat together on the sofa, her legs tucked beneath her, his arm draped across the back of the couch. The apartment was dim except for the soft glow of string lights and the faint sound of wind brushing against the windows. She asked me today if we're a family now, Michael said. Emily looked over at him. What did you say? I said yes, but only if she agrees. She already has, Emily said, smiling softly. She just needed to hear you say it first. There was a silence between them, not awkward, not heavy, just full of everything that had led them here. I still can't believe how much I missed, he said quietly. I'll never get those years back. No, Emily agreed, but you're here for the rest of them, and she knows that. That's what matters now. He turned to her, eyes searching hers. And us? She hesitated, not because she didn't know the answer, but because saying it out loud made it real. I think I loved you long before you knew what love was, she said. But we're not who we were. We've both grown, been hurt, raised a child. So if this is going to be something again, really something, it has to be new. No pretending we're just picking up where we left off. Michael nodded. Then let's start new. Emily leaned in and kissed him, not with urgency, but with warmth, certainty, forgiveness. Christmas morning came with the sound of Lily shrieking with laughter as she tore through the living room in her pajamas, dragging wrapping paper and ribbons behind her like a comet. Michael filmed everything, not because he wanted to show the world, but because he never wanted to forget it. They opened gifts slowly: books, socks, glitter pens, a telescope Michael had custom ordered. But the best gift came last. It was from Lily, a small box wrapped clumsily, with tape all over the sides. Inside was a framed picture she had drawn, the three of them, standing together, holding hands beneath a tree with stars in it. Above their heads she'd written in big letters, "My family." Michael didn't say a word. He couldn't. He just hugged her, held her tighter than ever, and let the tears fall where she couldn't see them. Later that night, as snow fell outside and the fire burned low, Lily slept in Michael's arms on the couch, her head tucked into the crook of his neck. Emily rested beside them, legs tangled with his, her eyes closed, breathing steady. Michael looked down at the child in his arms and the woman at his side, and for the first time in his life, he didn't feel like he was chasing anything. He had arrived, not at a finish line, but at a beginning. And it was more than he had ever dared to hope for. As the author, I believe the ending of this story speaks to something deeper than a reunion. It's about healing. Michael's journey isn't just one of discovery, but of redemption. He begins as a man who has everything and yet feels nothing, only to find meaning in the most unexpected place: a child's kindness. Lily, with her innocent gesture, unknowingly unlocks the part of him that was missing all along. Not wealth, not power, but love. And Emily, though wounded by the past, chooses grace over bitterness, not just for Lily's sake, but for her own healing too. The story doesn't offer a fairy tale ending in the traditional sense. There's no magic wand that erases the pain of lost years. But there is something more honest and powerful: choice. The choice to forgive, the choice to try again, the choice to love even after being hurt. In the end, it's not about the moment the truth is revealed, but about what each character does after it. That's where the story truly becomes beautiful. Because sometimes second chances don't come crashing in with drama. Sometimes they start with 5 quiet words. "I'll pay for him,"